Hello, and welcome back. Tonight, I have a story about endings that feel like beginnings, about one final day in the golden fields before the snow. The last harvest before snow. The sky that morning was the color of pewter and pale gold. I knew before I opened my eyes that something had shifted in the world. The quality of light through my window was softer, older, like light that had traveled farther to reach me. I lay there for a moment, hand resting on the quilt my grandmother had stitched before I was born. The air smelled different too, earthier, like the fields were exhaling after a long season of holding their breath. Today was the last harvest. I'd known it was coming. The calendar on my kitchen wall marked it with a small circle drawn in pencil. But knowing and feeling are two different things. The frost would come tonight or tomorrow. The old farmers said you could always tell by the way the light lay on the land. Thinner, more patient, waiting for permission to leave. Gently, I pulled on my work clothes without thinking, the same motion I'd made hundreds of mornings since spring. But my fingers moved slower today, button by button, tucking my hair back with the green ribbon my mother gave me when I first learned to plant seeds in straight rows. The kitchen was cold. I welcomed it, the sharpness that made me wrap both hands around my warm teacup. Through the window above the sink, I could see the hills wearing their last colors, deep gold, rust, touches of wine red where the maples held on. Just one more day, I whispered to the empty room. The words hung in the air like breath on a cold morning. One more day of this, and then the waiting begins. The walk to the fields took me past the old stone wall where the moss had grown thick as velvet. I stopped there longer than I should have. My grandmother used to say that moss only grows thick where the air is kind. I don't know if that's true, but I've never found a place with softer moss than this wall. The pumpkins were first. 23 of them heavy and orange as the setting sun, resting on the last of their vines like contented animals. I worked slowly, kneeling in the dirt that still held the night's coolness. Each stem I cut released a clean green smell, the smell of endings. My basket filled, then another. My hands knew this work. They didn't need my mind's permission to find the right angle, the right pressure. The root vegetables were harder. Carrots and potatoes don't want to leave the soil. They cling to it, hide themselves in darkness. I remembered planting them in early summer, the tiny seeds falling from my palm like hope made physical. Now I pulled them out, shook off the earth that had sheltered them, and laid them in rows. Each one felt like a small goodbye. By midday, my back ached and the sun had burned through the clouds. I sat on the stone wall to eat the bread and cheese I'd wrapped in cloth that morning. The valley spread below me like a painting. Our farm, the woods beyond, the thread of smoke rising from old Mrs. Kovac's chimney on the next hill. Everyone was doing the same thing today. Gathering, storing, preparing. The valley spread below me like a painting. Our farm, the woods beyond, the thread of smoke rising from old Mrs. Kovac's chimney on the next hill. Everyone was doing the same thing today. Gathering, storing, preparing. A rabbit watched me from the edge of the field, not moving, just watching with those dark, patient eyes. I know, I told it. You're waiting too. I thought about my grandmother, who taught me that vegetables pulled on a full moon keep longer through winter. I thought about my mother, who now lived in the city and sent letters describing places I'd never seen. I thought about winter, the quiet that would settle over this land like a held breath. The afternoon passed in rhythms: bend, pull, place. Bend, pull, place. My thoughts drifted like the clouds overhead. The wood stove's constant companionship, long evenings with books and mending, the way the house feels smaller when snow piles against the windows. Then I reached the last row, the potatoes at the far end of the field where the soil was rockier and the work slower. My fork hit something that wasn't earth or stone, a different sound, hollow, wooden. I knelt and cleared the soil with my hands, heart beating faster for reasons I couldn't name. It was a box, small, wooden, bound with copper that had turned green. I sat back on my heels and stared at it. The light had changed, longer shadows, deeper gold. I should finish the harvest. The potatoes wouldn't wait, but my hands were already lifting the box, brushing away the soil that had hidden it for how long? The lid opened with a sound like a held breath released. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, were letters, dozens of them, tied with a faded ribbon the color of sage, and on top, in my grandmother's handwriting, "For the one who finds this, read them when the fields are empty." I sat there until the light turned amber, then rose, then violet, reading, crying, laughing softly at words written decades ago. Love letters. My grandmother and grandfather before they married, before the farm was ours, before I existed. The last letter was dated October 15th, 1962. My grandmother had written, "Tomorrow we harvest the last of the potatoes, and then the fields will rest, and so will we." I never knew that endings could feel so much like beginning. Come home soon. The potatoes are waiting, but so am I. I never knew that endings could feel so much like beginning. I looked up. The stars were emerging one by one in a sky the color of deep plums. The potatoes were still in the ground, but somehow that didn't matter anymore. I carried the box back to the house as darkness wrapped itself around the valley. The kitchen welcomed me with its familiar warmth. I lit the lamp, added wood to the stove, and placed the box on the table where I'd eaten every meal since childhood. The potatoes. I looked out the window toward the dark field. They were still there, waiting, but the frost wouldn't wait forever. I pulled on my coat again, grabbed the lantern, and walked back out. The cold had sharpened. My breath made small clouds that vanished almost instantly. I harvested by lantern light. Each potato felt like a gift now, not a goodbye. My grandmother's hands had worked this same soil. Her hands had buried those letters, maybe in this very row. The thought wrapped around me like the warmest blanket. I wasn't alone in this field. I had never been alone. Each potato felt like a gift now, not a goodbye. When the last potato was gathered, I stood and looked at the empty field. The soil was dark and open, ready for the frost, ready for the snow, ready for the long rest. "Thank you," I whispered, to the field, to my grandmother, to the summer that had ended, to the winter that was coming. Back in the kitchen, I made tea and sat with the letters spread before me. I would read them again tomorrow, and probably again after that, but tonight, I just wanted to sit with the feeling of being held by something larger than myself. The frost came in the hour before dawn. I know because I woke to the silence of it, that particular quiet when the world pauses to let winter arrive. I pulled the quilt around my shoulders and watched from the window. The fields glittered. The last harvest was complete, but the letters were on my table, and my grandmother's voice was in my heart, and the potatoes were safe in the cellar, and somehow, impossibly, the endings didn't feel like endings at all.